Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Damon. Some betrayals are so complete that they reshape your entire understanding of human nature. What my wife did to me and our baby was a deliberate act of cruelty that would haunt us for years. But when she returned a decade later, expecting to reclaim what she had thrown away, she had no idea what I had waiting for her. Cassandra and I had been married for 2 years when she made the decision that would destroy our family and change the trajectory of all our lives forever. 2 years that I had believed were building toward something meaningful and lasting. 2 years during which we had welcomed our daughter Gracie into the world. Our marriage had started with promise, but looking back, I can see the warning signs that I chose to ignore at the time. Cassandra had always been somewhat impulsive and self-centered, but I attributed these traits to her youth and assumed she would mature as we built our life together. The pregnancy had been unplanned but not unwelcome. When Cassandra told me she was expecting, I was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a father. I immediately began preparing for our growing family, researching everything I could about parenting and making plans for how we would manage the responsibilities of raising a child. Cassandra's reaction to the pregnancy was more ambivalent. While she went through the motions of preparing for motherhood, she seemed distracted and often spoke about feeling trapped or overwhelmed by the changes happening in her life. I tried to be supportive and reassuring, thinking that her concerns were normal anxiety about becoming a first-time parent. Gracie was born healthy and beautiful, and for the first few months, it seemed like we were adjusting well to life as new parents. I was completely devoted to my daughter from the moment she arrived, and I threw myself into the role of father with enthusiasm and dedication. But Cassandra struggled with the realities of motherhood in ways that went beyond normal adjustment difficulties. She seemed resentful of the demands that caring for Gracie placed on her time and freedom. She frequently complained about feeling overwhelmed and spoke longingly about her life before the baby arrived. I tried to support Cassandra through what I assumed was postpartum depression or normal new parent stress. I took on extra childcare responsibilities, encouraged her to take time for herself, and suggested that we seek counseling or medical help if she was struggling emotionally. But instead of seeking help or adjusting to our new reality, Cassandra began withdrawing from both Gracie and me. She would disappear for hours at a time without explanation, claiming she needed space to think or clear her head. Her behavior became increasingly erratic and unreliable. What I didn't know at the time was that Cassandra had been in contact with her ex-boyfriend, someone she had dated before we met, but had claimed was completely out of her life. This man, Garrett, had apparently never stopped pursuing her, and she had never completely let go of their relationship despite marrying me. The truth about Cassandra's feelings became clear in the most devastating way possible. One morning, I left for work as usual, kissing both Cassandra and Gracie goodbye, and expecting to return home to my family that evening. But when I arrived at my home that afternoon, I found something that would haunt me forever. There, on my office doorstep, was Gracie's car seat with my 6-month-old daughter inside, along with a hastily packed diaper bag and a brief note from Cassandra. The note was cold and matter-of-fact, explaining that she couldn't handle being a mother and that she was leaving with Garrett to start a new life. She wrote that she had never stopped loving him and that trying to build a family with me had been a mistake she needed to correct. Gracie was crying when I found her, clearly distressed by being abandoned and left alone. The sight of my helpless daughter, dumped like an unwanted package on my doorstep by the woman who was supposed to love and protect her, filled me with a mixture of rage and heartbreak that I had never experienced before. I immediately brought Gracie inside and tried to comfort her while processing the magnitude of what Cassandra had done. I wonder how long she left this kid alone. She had not only abandoned our marriage, but had literally abandoned our infant daughter, leaving her alone and vulnerable without any regard for her safety or well-being. My first instinct was to contact Cassandra's parents, thinking they would be as horrified by their daughter's behavior as I was. I called them immediately, explaining what had happened and asking if they knew where Cassandra had gone or how to reach her. But their response was even more shocking than Cassandra's abandonment. Instead of expressing concern for their granddaughter or outrage at their daughter's behavior, They simply said that the child was my burden now. They made it clear that they had no intention of helping or getting involved in the situation Cassandra had created. Their callous dismissal of Gracie as a burden rather than their granddaughter revealed that Cassandra's capacity for cruelty and selfishness hadn't developed in a vacuum. Her parents' attitude showed me where she had learned to view children as inconveniences rather than precious gifts deserving of love and protection. I quickly realized that I was completely on my own in dealing with this situation. Cassandra had disappeared without a trace. Her parents had washed their hands of any responsibility, and I was left to figure out how to care for Gracie while trying to understand what had happened to my marriage. The practical challenges of suddenly becoming a single father were enormous. I had to arrange childcare so I could continue working, learn to manage all aspects of Gracie's care on my own, and deal with the emotional trauma of explaining to friends and family that my wife had abandoned us. But beyond the practical challenges, the emotional impact of what Cassandra had done was devastating. The woman I had married and trusted with my heart had not only betrayed me, but had abandoned our innocent child in the most callous way possible. The depth of her selfishness was almost incomprehensible. I hired a private investigator to try to locate Cassandra, initially hoping that she might come to her senses and return home. But the investigation revealed that she had indeed left the country with Garrett, apparently using money she had been secretly saving for months to fund their escape. Faced with the reality that Cassandra was gone and had no intention of returning, I made the difficult decision to divorce her in her absence. Her disappearance complicated the legal process, but my attorney was able to proceed with the divorce based on abandonment and her failure to respond to legal notices. The divorce was finalized with me receiving full custody of Gracie, given that Cassandra had voluntarily abandoned her parental responsibilities and couldn't be located to contest the proceedings. I was granted sole legal and physical custody, with the court recognizing that Cassandra had forfeited her parental rights through her actions. The years that followed were challenging, but also deeply rewarding. Raising Gracie on my own required significant sacrifices and adjustments to my life, but watching her grow into a bright, loving child made every difficulty worthwhile. She became the center of my world, and I was determined to give her all the love and stability that Cassandra had denied her. Gracie never asked much about her mother during her early years, and I tried to answer her occasional questions honestly but age-appropriately. I explained that her mother had made the difficult decision to leave when she was very young, but I was always careful not to speak negatively about Cassandra in front of our daughter. As Gracie grew older and started school, I became involved in parent activities and school events, often being the only father in groups dominated by mothers. Other parents sometimes asked about Gracie's mother, and I would simply explain that I was a single father raising my daughter alone. The years passed peacefully, with Gracie and me building a strong, loving relationship. She excelled in school, made friends easily, and showed no signs of being damaged by her mother's abandonment. I was proud of the resilient, confident child she was becoming despite the circumstances of her early life. I kept detailed records of everything related to Gracie's care and development, including medical records, school reports, photos, and documentation of all the milestones and achievements in her life. I did this partly for my own memories, but also with a nagging feeling that someday I might need proof of the life we had built together. That intuition proved to be prescient when Gracie was 10 years old and our peaceful life was suddenly disrupted by an unexpected legal challenge. I received papers indicating that Cassandra was suing me for custody of Gracie, claiming that I had kept them apart and denied her access to her daughter. The lawsuit was a shock, but what made it even more infuriating was the narrative Cassandra was presenting. According to her legal filing, she claimed that she had only temporarily left to deal with personal issues and that I had deliberately hidden Gracie from her and refused to allow contact between mother and daughter. Her parents were supporting her legal challenge, apparently providing both financial backing and testimony claiming that they had tried to maintain contact with their granddaughter, but that I had prevented it. Their sudden interest in Gracie, after a decade of treating her as a burden, was transparently self-serving. The legal papers revealed that Cassandra had been living abroad for the past 10 years, had married and divorced Garrett, and was now presenting herself as a reformed person who wanted to reconnect with the daughter she had abandoned. She was asking for joint custody and claiming that Gracie needed her mother in her life. I had no idea what happened between her and Garrett, but my little findings showed he was no longer in her life, which might be a major reason she is back here claiming my daughter. I was furious at the audacity of someone who had literally dumped her baby on a doorstep, now claiming to be a loving mother who had been wrongfully separated from her child. The rewriting of history that her lawsuit represented was both insulting and deeply troubling. I immediately hired the best family law attorney I could afford, knowing that this would be a fight for Gracie's future and well-being. My lawyer was experienced in complex custody cases and understood the unique challenges posed by Cassandra's decade-long abandonment, followed by her sudden return. The legal battle that followed was one of the messiest and most emotionally draining experiences of my life. Cassandra's attorneys painted a picture of a young mother who had made a temporary mistake and deserved a second chance to build a relationship with her daughter. But I had something they didn't expect. 10 years of meticulous documentation proving that Cassandra had voluntarily abandoned Gracie and had made no efforts to maintain contact or provide support. I had kept records of every aspect of Gracie's life, creating an undeniable timeline of her development and my consistent care. The evidence I presented included the original note Cassandra had left when she abandoned Gracie, records of my attempts to contact her through her parents, documentation of her deliberate departure from the country, and proof that neither she nor her parents had made any effort to maintain contact with Gracie over the past decade. My attorney also presented testimony from Gracie's teachers, pediatrician, and other adults in her life who could attest to the stable, loving environment I had provided and the strong bond Gracie and I shared. The contrast between my documented involvement in Gracie's life and Cassandra's complete absence was stark and undeniable. During depositions, Cassandra's explanations for her behavior were unconvincing and constantly shifting. She claimed she had been overwhelmed by postpartum depression, that she had intended to return after a brief separation, and that my supposed refusal to allow contact had prevented her from rebuilding her relationship with Gracie. But when confronted with the evidence of her deliberate abandonment and the note she had left, her story fell apart. She couldn't explain why she had never sent a single birthday card, never made a phone call, never sent money for Gracie's care, or never attempted to establish any form of contact over 10 years. Her parents' testimony was equally unconvincing when they were forced to explain their initial statement that Gracie was my burden and their complete lack of involvement in their granddaughter's life. Their sudden transformation from people who wanted nothing to do with Gracie to grandparents fighting for access was transparently motivated by something other than love. The court-appointed guardian ad litem, who was assigned to represent Gracie's best interests, conducted a thorough investigation of both households and interviewed Gracie about her feelings and preferences. The guardian's report strongly favored maintaining the stable environment I had provided and questioned the wisdom of disrupting Gracie's life for someone who was essentially a stranger to her. Gracie, now 10 years old, was old enough to express her own feelings about the situation. She had no memory of Cassandra and felt no connection to someone who claimed to be her mother, but whom she had never known. The idea of being forced to spend time with a stranger was frightening and confusing to her. The trial itself was emotionally devastating, but ultimately vindicating. Cassandra took the stand and tried to present herself as a reformed person who deserved a chance to know her daughter. But her testimony crumbled under cross-examination when she was confronted with the evidence of her choices. The judge's ruling was decisive and comprehensive. The court found that Cassandra had voluntarily abandoned her parental rights through her actions, and that her current lawsuit was not motivated by Gracie's best interests, but by her own desires and possibly financial considerations. The judge terminated Cassandra's parental rights entirely, finding that her abandonment had been so complete and her absence so prolonged that awarding her any custody or visitation would be harmful to Gracie's well-being. The court noted that Gracie had thrived in my care and that disrupting her stable life for someone she didn't know would be traumatic and inappropriate. Additionally, the court ordered Cassandra and her parents to pay my legal fees, recognizing that their frivolous lawsuit had caused unnecessary emotional and financial hardship for Gracie and me. The legal fees were substantial, given the complexity of the case and the high-quality representation I had secured. But the victory went beyond just the legal outcome. The trial had exposed the truth about what had happened 10 years earlier and had validated the choices I had made in raising Gracie as a single father. The court's recognition of the loving, stable environment I had provided was deeply meaningful. The aftermath of the trial brought a sense of closure that I hadn't realized I needed. For 10 years, I had carried some uncertainty about whether I had handled Cassandra's abandonment correctly, and whether Gracie might someday blame me for keeping her from her mother. The court's findings made it clear that my decisions had been appropriate, and that Gracie's well-being had always been my priority. The legal validation of our relationship and the life we had built together was profoundly satisfying. Cassandra's attempt to rewrite history and portray herself as a victim had failed completely when confronted with the documentary evidence of her choices. The meticulous records I had kept over the years had provided an undeniable timeline of her abandonment and my consistent care for Gracie. The experience taught Gracie important lessons about responsibility, commitment, and the difference between people who claim to care and people who actually show up when it matters. While the legal battle was difficult for her, she emerged from it with a clearer understanding of her own story and appreciation for the life we had built together. Today, Gracie is a thriving teenager who has grown up secure in the knowledge that she is loved and valued. The woman who abandoned her on a doorstep as an infant had no claim to the remarkable young person she became through years of consistent love and care. Cassandra's parents, who had dismissed Gracie as a burden 10 years earlier, were forced to confront the consequences of their callous attitude when their attempt to support their daughter's custody claim backfired completely. Their sudden interest in their granddaughter was revealed for what it was: opportunistic and self-serving rather than genuine love. The legal battle also revealed the importance of documentation and record-keeping in situations involving child custody and abandonment. The detailed records I had maintained over the years provided irrefutable evidence of both Cassandra's abandonment and my consistent involvement in Gracie's life. Looking back on the entire experience, I can see that what Cassandra meant as an act of cruelty ultimately became the foundation for one of the most rewarding relationships of my life. Her abandonment of Gracie gave me the opportunity to raise an extraordinary daughter and build a bond that no court challenge could threaten. The woman who dumped our baby on my doorstep and disappeared thought she was escaping responsibility, but she was actually giving up the most precious thing in the world. When she returned 10 years later, expecting to reclaim what she had thrown away, she discovered that some abandonment is too complete to be undone, and some love is too strong to be challenged by people who were never really there in the first place. Gracie and I emerged from this experience stronger and more united than ever, with our relationship validated by both the legal system and our own unshakable bond. The burden that Cassandra's parents claimed Gracie would be turned out to be the greatest blessing of my life, and no one who abandoned her had any right to claim her love or loyalty after we had built our life together without them. If you had found yourself in my shoes, would you have done anything differently, or would you have done exactly what I did? Let us know in the comments. Like and share this story with someone you think might be experiencing this situation right now. Thank you for watching.